it? So
Yeah.
we'll go. Okay, so hello and welcome everybody for Show and Tell, Seeing is Believing Part 2. Last week we had a wonderful session, where Graham took us on a journey to see kind of with new eyes our name, and I think therefore our identity, by drawing the name in many different ways. And I thought it was intriguing, stimulating, and kind of opened up different perspectives on how we see, feel, and perceive ourselves. It really tapped into all senses in a way. So that was great. And then Julia, you made us look at the negative space, which you perceive to be the place the female perspective of art was relegated to in the past, as well as sharing your own disregard for perspective and how that leads to new ways of seeing. So I think we had a really wonderful, interesting, insightful debate. And it kind of really made, I think, the whole subject, and it's every time with our lockdown discussions, it makes me think a lot about these things during the week. And I've come to think about traces as well, and how faint traces are shadows of what we see, but how traces connect our art, our history and ancestry. And I thought of, kind of these ancestral trees that people draw with like traces between histories, people, and how much that kind of exemplifies, it's a tree of life, but its possibilities, its futures, hopes, destinies, dead ends, continuation, new growth, it's all there in a way. So I thought it was really nice, and I really look forward to hearing more from the rest of the group. So we want to start off with Jill, because Jill might have to pop away at a little bit. So we'll start off with Jill, and then
I am coming back. I've also forgot something else.
Okay, and then look forward to. Caroline gave us a little teaser on Facebook already, so I'm very, very curious about that. And then we've got Roger and David and Sarah as well still. So maybe we'll fit everybody in today, which would be lovely, and I think we'll manage. So over to Jill, if you're ready.
Thank you. Yes, Marianne. I'll just
right, I'm here.
Just share my screen. There we go. I've just forgotten how to make, hang on. Here we go. Right. That should be it. Okay, so I probably wasn't going to say this, but because of what Julia and Caroline were just saying, I'm going to own up. I've just heard today that someone at college that I worked out with for a couple of decades has also unfortunately died, but under very, very difficult circumstances. So I've been in that land. I might be a little bit wobbly. No, I won't be, but yeah, just so because you mentioned it, I've mentioned it too, but I'll go on with the presentation. And I thought last week's was such amazing presentations, very difficult act to follow. So mine's not that long, I don't think, and maybe sharing with you some things that I've talked about before, but in a different light. So here we go. So seeing is believing. There are many discoveries, insights and surprises to be gained from seeing artworks firsthand in the flesh. And these can shake us out of our assumptions and our expectations and beliefs, which is a good thing. The most striking example of this for me, and I know that I've talked about this before, was seeing Kapoor's Temenos in Middlesbrough in its surroundings by the Transporter Bridge, in the disused dock area and by the Riverside Stadium. This is a really difficult form to pin down and understand and see in your mind's eye. As you walk around it, each new view contradicts the previous. So there's just a kind of collage of perceptions that highlights the importance of imagining the views from elsewhere, how someone else would see it. And so this became quite an important question that I began to ask when talking about public art in general. How does it look to someone else from somewhere else? That became an important question for me. But on the other hand, I'm also a strong believer that you don't have to physically see a work for it to have a powerful effect or impact. I have artworks in my imagination that I've read about or been told about that I've conjured up, although I've never got to see them. And in this group, contributions by David and Michelle in particular have illustrated this powerfully. And I'm often kind of drawn to the fact that before we had photography and printing and illustrations, many had to rely on literary descriptions of artworks, and that was all they had. However, today I'm going to talk about some connected artworks where for me, the viewing firsthand and the journey to see them was very important. If I can move on. Was very important to me, and it all began with an art college reunion in Devon and a visit to my old art history teacher Leslie Kerman's studio, and that's a picture of Leslie Kerman in the centre there. And when I went to her studio, what I saw was her work in progress, which was a reconstruction of the reverse side of Duccio's, and I don't know how to pronounce it, Maesta, M-A-E-S-T-A. So this is I'll show you the whole version of it later, but it's a kind of altarpiece, Renaissance altarpiece. And on the reverse side, there's lots and lots of panels, and Leslie was, her work that I saw in progress was a reconstruction of those panels. And there's one on the left there. I put some things in that might connect with different people in the group. So Graham, at the bottom there, there's a kind of Duchamp door, a paradoxical door that's both open and shut at the same time. Yeah. So there's a little treat for any Duchamp.
I missed that.
Yeah.
Never seen that before.
Yeah. Have you seen Duchamp's door?
Yeah.
So there it is, but in the 14th century.
That's great. Yeah.
So this inspired me to go and see the original in Siena, and then Leslie's reconstruction, which was presented in a little chapel in a Welsh valley. And there's the chapel in the bottom right-hand corner, which had recently been converted to create a gallery. And it's about 10 miles away from Aberystwyth. So I had a journey to Siena and a journey to Aberystwyth to see these connected artworks. So next steps, I've had my reunion in Devon with my art school chums, and so I'm moving on a few months to my first ever visit to Venice. And this was on the occasion of my 60th birthday. We had a trip to Venice planned. And I persuaded my husband that as well as go to Venice, we should take a day trip to Siena while we were there on the train, just to visit this one artwork in Siena. However, I've got stopping off a little detour in Venice, museum in Venice, which I wanted to just take a little detour to because it seemed relevant. And this photograph of this kind of, I don't know, mural, whatever we want to call it, I've included it because the painted light in the mural is consistent with the actual light source, which is coming from the windows to the right, which look out onto the river. So painted and represented light layers with the actual light coming into the room, and you had to be there to see that and to appreciate that. Okay, so then a stolen trip to Siena and a train trip through Florence. So I think we had to get 2 trains to get from Venice to Siena, that was marvelous in itself, and it was really exciting just to go to one place to see one thing. So we were very disciplined. We did look at other artworks, but we spent the time seeing this one thing. And I kind of thought that's a really good thing to do, rather than overwhelm, yourself, which we all do, don't we? When we finally get to the Tate or the National Gallery, we overwhelm ourselves with so many things. But in this case, we just went to see the one thing. So this is Siena on the hill. There's another picture of Siena. And this is I guess this is like a digital reconstruction of the altarpiece. So the panels on the reverse, which is on the right hand side, then you wouldn't see them like that now. They're all dispersed. There's a number in the museum in Siena, but others would be part of different collections and in different museums around the world. So this is what it would have looked like in 1308, but not how you could see it now. So that's the reverse side. On the left-hand side is the front, and the middle kind of layer, you can see that in Siena, but the elements on to the top and the bottom are once again dispersed. Okay, so the front would have faced the congregation, and the back would have faced the clergy and the choir. And the panels tell stories from Christ's life, and each has an intriguing kind of use of pictorial space. If I just move on, I've got a few close-ups of some of the panels.
Oh,
They're gorgeous, aren't they?
Mm.
Leslie, in her book and through her reconstruction, argued that this kind of use of pictorial space was at odds to the Renaissance tradition as celebrated in the work of Florentine artists, I don't know, Da Vinci, Michelangelo, artists like that, that they tend to be at the top of our art history. She was saying, or she says in her book, that Duccio's use of pictorial space is more in keeping with the experimentation of, say, early modernism, where the space of the painting might be contradictory or fragmented rather than coherent. And, you know, thinking of like the post-impressionists or the cubists. And I thought again that might somehow connect with the way that, I don't know whether this is true or not, but the way that Graham's talked about perception and perspective, and how we're kind of shoehorned into a formula which is very different from our experience of space. So I wondered whether that would ring some bells. And of course, sorry,
Jill. I was going to say, I think the difference was that when you're doing a fresco, you know, you're seeing things on a much more massive scale. So I think that does affect, you know, the way the perspective is presented. Really, it's like Mantegna when he, you know, like figure laid on the bed, with his feet are no bigger than, you know, they're not bigger like they would be in a photograph. But it certainly gets that idea of perspective, of figure laid out, pointing towards you. I think when it's in a small, like looking through a window-sized picture, it's a completely different, you know, kind of formula, I guess, or practice. Has experienced something like you're saying in you know, bigger than natural scale in a way. It's a very interesting subject, you know. David Hockney, you know, explains all of that in that brilliant book, you know, Ways of Seeing, which is Secret Knowledge. It's called Secret Knowledge. But I would say that's a great book for anybody to read. And just that again, a bit like Ways of Seeing, it changed your whole perception of, you know, the history of art. Really, it's fantastic. You know.
And of course, the sort of traditional perspective view only makes sense if you stand in one spot, look at one thing and don't move. So the minute you're moving around and moving your head and looking at different things, and some things are more important than others, then that destroys that cohesiveness.
I love the way it has a sense of leading you into the other door, almost like a labyrinth. That kind of, it's telling a story. It's, you know, his hand reaching up this way, leading you in. But it didn't need the perspective that we're accustomed, because it's telling that story pictorially.
Well, it refers back. There's different kinds of reality. Sorry, Jill.
No, you're all right. Sorry.
I was going to say there's different kinds of realities, isn't there? There's a reality of an observed world, of being, you know, being surrounded by a world, or, you know, looking up to a world. They're all different kinds of perspective, really. I think we have just, like we mentioned before, we've become so obsessed now with a single lens perspective, looking through a camera, or, you know, everything's gone through a single lens, so we see things in, you know, that conventional perspective. But that's totally false. You know, as we've kind of discussed this before, where it's a complete distortion. So the distortion's in that image, and, you know, not as, you know, nowhere near as bad as the kind of perspective that we all rely on and think is real. But really, it's just
the other
illusion.
About this image, I think, is that there's another perception, which is like the unknown through that black space. I mean, it's almost like another world, isn't it? Like, where the hell are you going there? You know, it's
absolutely. And someone called them cosmic voids. You know, they're kind of black holes, and they're repeated throughout these these are quite small panels, lots of them, so they're repeated throughout. But I suppose I was drawn to the fact that if they were a hole in the board or whatever it is, the panel, it would be through to the front of the picture because it's a front and a back, and it would be a hole through to whatever's on the other side.
Oh,
So,
that's very natural, though, isn't it? Is that what they...
Does it align? Does it align to the back of it, the image?
No, I don't think so. Actually, I might.
But is that what they perceived it to be, though? That's what I mean, Jill. Is that what they thought it was then? That was... Oh, okay.
I don't know.
I love the way the foot is hanging over the edge.
Yeah.
It's reminding me of that artist who has bits of fruit and things at the front. Who's that, Roger? I can never remember people. National Gallery. Oh, he always has like a frame, but the fruit will be on the outside of the frame.
Yes, I know who you mean. I know what you mean. That's a really lovely observation, actually. I'll show you some more. So there are lots of panels. So here's a Last Supper. Obviously, you know, we know Da Vinci's Last Supper for its textbook perspective, although I'm not sure it is actually. I think there's anomalies within it, having said that. But this has this really fragmented, zigzaggy space. And the two layers of apostles are really interesting. And still there's a black hole into the background. All right. So, yeah, so in Leslie's book, and so some of you have heard me talk about my art college experience before and how really male dominated it was, and hard drinking and hard everything else. And I suppose the relationship that's stayed longest with me is with my own art history teacher, Leslie Kerman, and I've talked about her before. And her influence on me has lasted my lifetime, really, although it disappeared underground for a long time and I've only picked up some of the threads recently. And I wouldn't share her life details, but her life details were so hard, and it was so hard for her to be the only, or one of the only female teachers at that kind of art college. And she was amazing, really, and I probably didn't appreciate her as much at the time as I could have done, because I probably fell for the male abstract big painters were more worthy of our respect. But anyway, so this is partly about the artworks, but I guess it's partly about Leslie as well, who is amazing. So yeah, we've already talked about the doorways and the openings and the windows into darkness. Leslie was always very interested in reconstruction. So as an art history tutor, that was part of her teaching. Unfortunately, it was a kind of approach to teaching that she did after I'd left. So I didn't kind of experience that side of her teaching. But I've seen lots of work that students have done subsequently where they've intimately got to know an artwork by reconstructing it. She studied under Richard Hamilton in Newcastle when he was reconstructing Duchamp's large glass. So I've just put that in the bottom just to remind us. And of course, that's its own double-sided window image, and it's got a back and a front. Yeah, and Leslie even found a Duchamp door that is both open and shut amongst the Maidstone panels. So this is the book that she wrote, and this is her reconstruction in the little chapel in this Welsh valley. So that's part from her book. So this was a few months after our Venice trip, or it might have been the following year. My poor husband, we had I think it must have been our 10th wedding anniversary, and he said, where should we go? Where should we go? You know, we've got a big family between us, and often have a lot of people living in the house. So little trips away are very highly valued. And I expect he was thinking, well, we might go to Paris or somewhere like that. He said, where should we go for our wedding anniversary? Aberystwyth, I said. And he's used to this. You know, he has many treats. He often goes to Middlesbrough or Sunderland or, you know, somewhere like that as a special treat. So we went to Aberystwyth and we had a fab few days. Such a beautiful place, beautiful countryside. But I suppose the main thing of it was this going to Leslie's opening of her exhibition in this chapel. And again, it was the journey there, not just a train trip, but this time it was a walk. So this is a map, and I think we must have parked somewhere near the church, the cross that's on the left-hand side, and walked along that path that goes alongside the river to the chapel. That's only kind of a couple of miles by the looks of things. But it was such a magical walk, and it was part of the experience was that walk, just as going to Siena. Part of the experience was the train trip. So off we went, and there's a picture of the space, the little chapel space, and I'm drawn to the windows and the arches and the doorways that look like those black holes in the paintings themselves. And there's Leslie on the left-hand side making a drawing of all the panels once they're assembled on the wall. And what a appropriate space it was for the exhibition. And then there's all the people that made the journey and turned up for the opening, which was a fantastic occasion. And so that's that. And so just to end with, so that's my 2 trips to see I think you pronounce it the Maester, and then the reconstruction of the Maester. So I'm just going to finish oddly and strangely miles away from that. I found a quote as I was looking and reading through things, which felt relevant. Sometimes the more you know, the less you see. What you encounter is your knowledge, not the thing itself. And I was drawn to like the really special time that I've had seeing the world afresh through my grandchildren's eyes, because they don't have that knowledge that is referenced in the quote. They're seeing things for the very first time, and it's almost like I have the honour of seeing things for the very first time again through their eyes. And I've talked to you, I know, about Ruby and pavements and roads and different kinds of surfaces. So that's where I'm ending it. That's it.
Thank you. That's a lovely photograph, that one. That's great.
That was it.
Oh, thank you, Sarah.
Very interesting. I was trying to write down
I've written loads.
Friend Leslie, your tutor's name and the name of the book. And can you
Leslie Kerman.
Leslie Kerman with a K, and it's called Reconstructing Duccio.
Right, okay, I'm going to put that down. Finding a pen.
Can you write it in the chat? I can't.
Oh yes, good idea.
You know, if you write it, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, if she's got something in a chapel in Lincolnshire, because there's a little chapel on the hill, and I was it's not far away. It's kind of, there's a really high point. If you look for kind of a really geographically high point in Lincolnshire, there's this little chapel. It's right on the top of a hill, and it's like at the end of a dead end road, so you would never go there unless you were just exploring. And it feels great when you're there, because it really does feel like only certain people know it's there. But when you get in, there's just this amazing, beautiful fresco painting with gold leaf on it, and it's really amazing.
Whereabouts?
In Lincolnshire.
And who's the artist, Sarah?
No idea. We just were walking one day and just found it, and you know, when you feel like all your Christmases have come at once because you've just made another little discovery.
Yeah.
So you kind of put it. I'll see if I can find it, because I've probably put a pinpoint on a map, because I tend to Google Maps it and remind myself where things are. So see if I can find it.
You know, Jill, when you saw the original,
yeah,
they're a bit overwhelming, aren't they? Because I think Venice is like the most, we went on our 25th, actually. That was the first time I couldn't believe it'd taken so long to go there. And it was like overwhelming to me, the amount of richness and lusciousness in the art. I almost couldn't take it. So it was really nice to sort of, for you to focus on one, to get in like that and to focus. I mean, even just going around every single corner in Venice, you'd see another unbelievable church, and then you think, we really must go in it, but then you think, and you just got completely saturated, don't you? It's very weird. So it's lovely to see more beautiful things and realise that that's multiplied by about 10 billion in Venice, isn't it?
Yeah.
Fascinating.
I like the bit you said at the very beginning about you didn't necessarily have to go to see things.
Yeah.
Because this morning I heard a program, which I caught halfway through, like I often do these things, about blind people who have things described for them in text for television, and how they fill in the gaps. They fill in the gaps. And only now, as these people have become adult, they realise the stories of films they'd watched as children, they'd completely misinterpreted. It was just such an interesting program, because it was the things that seeing people choose to describe are not necessarily what a blind person wants to hear described. It was just absolutely fascinating that they were saying, I particularly remember them saying a red hand, like they were focusing on telling them things they didn't particularly want to know, but then completely missing things. But the thing about filling in these spaces, he said when he finally found out some of these films, the imagination that he'd put into seeing these films and hearing these films and not knowing what they were about. I think that was the deaf part, but it was about your senses and how for different people, different senses require things described differently. And so now everybody's got, you can have subtitles with everything, but it was just said it was quite disappointed when he found out, the stories that he'd imagined these films he'd seen as a child are about. Anyway, I thought it was quite interesting because it was about just your senses, deafness, blindness.
It was a good program when I heard it. It was really interesting.
I thought it was
quite a deaf presenter, wasn't it, June? And he was trying to explain he even asked the question, what is sound? Which is, a massive question, isn't it? And then what is sound to you? When you see captions, sometimes you do see them if you're doing subtitles for some reason, and it says man enters with footsteps, something, and there's an art to it. And there are now these captioneers all over the world who are creating images for people without giving away everything. It's a real art.
Because the part of the reason I was attracted to listening is because when Chloe works for Channel 4, one of the jobs they always give her is to describe programs that are coming on, without, as you said, giving away too much, but giving enough to intrigue people and make them want to watch the program. It's just quite interesting. I can't remember what it was called because I didn't hear the beginning of it.
It's interesting as well because it kind of fits within that seeing is believing, and that we can only maybe see and perceive what we know, and it's shaped by the world and what we see, so what we think is important. And you can't actually really, as a seeing person, can you really truly understand a blind person's perspective and what they want to see. Yeah, it's really interesting, isn't it? Great. Thank you so much, Jill. That was beautiful, kind of taking us on a journey to the different places you go to see art, and kind of, I like the idea of the back of the panel, and obviously I think every back of any painting and perspective will always remind me of Julia, so that's nice. It's nice how you drop little things in there and around
The
upwards.
idea of going through things always fascinates me, through doors, and that's why sewing always seems so important to me.
I thought
the needle going through and coming back and going through and piercing.
I thought exactly the same thing. I thought of you. So when the holes in the, you know, those black holes, I think of those as you working to the front and coming to the back with your needle. That's exactly what the image.
Well, I've never ever been very happy with the edge of things, which is why I nearly always make screens and add bits on and take bits off. And you know, I ended up making a screen for my Titian thing for my degree show, because I couldn't just have one paint. It had to be, and that's what I loved about that as well, was the kind of almost like cartoon-like element of the page. I love things with little tiles around them or little bits that add to the story. And it's yeah. It definitely resonated with me.
You probably always go to the edge of seeing, and you always know there's something more to be seen, Julia, isn't it? So it's a continuing journey.
It reminded me of, there was when we went to Sintra near near Lisbon. There's a place called Sintra, and within Sintra there's this place called Quinta de Regularia, which is like, they've tried to, it makes me realise now, looking at those paintings, what they were trying to create. They've created this place which was, it was described as La Sintra's glorious Eden intervenes in a variegated maze of mountain glen. And it's like, it is like this amazing land with tunnels and like these, it's quite weird as well. I think there's something a bit sort of freaky about it, you know. I think they were, but it's also just wondrous and amazing. I think Byron used to go there. It was, yeah, just this amazing place. If you're ever at Lisbon, it's definitely one to go and visit.
Sintra was one of my most amazing places I've ever seen. Venice and Sintra, that's the two. It's funny they should both come up tonight, isn't it? Sintra, amazing place, wonderful, amazing.
It's strange when you go through the tunnels, isn't it? Because one of the weird things about those paintings is that what's in the tunnel, but actually when you go through the tunnels in Sintra, it feels quite strange, because it comes out somewhere else in the garden. And
to Porto, and they don't know, a lot of people don't know about Sintra. It's only about a few hours away on the train. That's how we went. And it's the most magnificent, crazy place. Beautiful, and it's like a Garden of Eden as well, isn't it? If you love nature, honestly, seriously, it is like you're in heaven. It's the most beautiful place as well.
Excellent.
Wow, 2 beautiful places already.
Thank you. Well, actually, talking about beautiful places, I think, if you don't mind, Caroline, I would like to move on to you and your presentation, because you kind of really intrigued me with what you've put on Facebook, and I haven't seen the film.
Anybody see it at all?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
I didn't see it.
When I put it up, it's the opening, or it's the trailer for the film of The Song of Bernadette, which is a very early 1950s film, maybe earlier, no, 1950s, and it's about the the apparitions, apparently, that a young peasant girl saw in Lourdes, and it's the start of Lourdes, which is the pilgrimage centre now for the whole world, isn't it? So I wanted to, the reason why I'm talking about it is that I wanted to talk about when we've created an art, whatever the art is, what I'm most interested in always really is audience and how it's received, because being involved in, you know, a lot of performance over my time, and also having had trained as an artist, for me it's like who does it belong to once you've made it? How is it received? And does it matter? And as an art tutor and a drama tutor and an actor, etc., I have always, when I was sort of teaching, say, analysing a show, a play or a reading or text, I would ask the students and we would discuss, what did you think it was about? What do you think it was about? What do you think it was about? And it isn't necessarily just one line. And I really believe that. And I think it's quite interesting when directors or artists, or I have to keep on swapping my angles, want to say, this is what I'm manipulating you to think. This is what I want you to, this is what you must look at now. This is what you must look at now. And there is an art to that, of course, on stage as in film. And also in art, of course, there is. And for me, it's really fascinating. I wanted to show you a little bit of this film. And if I can get it on my phone, and it might possibly come up, you might be able to get a sense of its drama and its atmosphere and its era. Because if I can get a little bit up to show you the trailer, if you can see it on this in a minute. I'm sorry, I'm so crap at being able to embed all this stuff. I just couldn't do it. But if I can do that, if it doesn't work, fair enough. I would like to then read you some writing I wrote about this film, because it was the very first experience I'd ever had of film. It was my very first film.
Wow.
I think possibly apart from Bambi. Which in a way is a relation, isn't it? And that was maybe when I was 3 or something. But I was about 6 when I saw The Song of Bernadette. And it was my very, very first experience of film. And I know, being a Catholic and having our whole world surrounding Catholicism and the church, that was our social life as children and my family, really. At the time, that film was, in a sense, an embodiment of Catholic dogma, if you like. It was about miracles, it was about belief. So I've used this film because it's about seeing is believing. Obviously, I'm pushing the envelope a bit here, but I wanted to talk about it in that sort of manner. I'll try and see if I can get it up. I had it up a minute ago, but it's classic if it goes again. Let's just see. Oh, here we are. It may be here. I think it is anyway. Let's see. Here we go. No, it's YouTube's gone again. Oh, you get YouTube and then it goes again, doesn't it? Oh, here we are. Just see if you can hear a little, just to get a sense of the period. Oh, it's stopped. Why is it stopped? Here we are. Oh, it won't go. Why won't it? Sorry. I'll do some more. It's not good. Hang on. I won't go on forever. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Here we go. Here's some more. I'll stop it a bit, move it on a bit, hang on. Just a little bit more. No, it's got, oh, I'm giving up. And basically, you saw the picture of the girl. Jennifer Jones was the young peasant girl. She was the star of the film. You heard the sound of the music. You saw the era. Yeah, all of you?
Yes.
So did you get, obviously it was full black and white, full gothic, melodrama. Now, I was 6 or 7, and that film, of course, went all round every single Catholic church hall in the whole of the world, I should imagine. I don't know, probably was dubbed all over the world, because they were pushing Lourdes big time by that time as a place to go and, for people who needed miracles to happen. Bear in mind, I was 6 or 7. I can't remember how old I must have been. I can't have been more than 7. Anyway, what I want to, before I read my writing out, I wanted to say that I think that art, I've just written a few things out here. Art can be received however the audience wishes. I believe this. Once it's made, it is no longer yours. People will see what they do from it, because the audience is its life giver and its feeder. Whoever's watching or whoever's witnessing or being immersed in it, or however they react to it. Directing, analysing that work like art or theatre is about the interaction between the work and the watcher and the viewer. And I've been to see, in the last 10, 15 years, theatre and performance has changed drastically to, particularly, it's very, very popular now. Popular is the wrong word. It's very prevalent now that there's immersive theatre where you become part of the action. You are immersed in the space, the sets, the atmosphere. There's a particular company called Punch Drunk who recreate incredibly detailed interiors where you walk around and you witness different things. Now, I took, when I first found Punch Drunk, I went on my own, but then later on I took students and I used to see everything they did, because for me it was an amazing experience. And what happened was, you go into a building that they have taken over, and they will recreate whatever the story is that they want you to, that they are creating for you to experience. But nobody has the same experience, because you can go wherever you want. You can literally choose it. You choose to go through that door, this door, and they don't manipulate you at all. In a way, they sort of do, but they don't, because it's totally up to you. And at the end of our sessions, when we used to go out to London and see them, because they're usually in London, of course, we used to sort of had some fantastic experiences, because some people would say, oh, I went in that room when someone took a heart out of a box and talked to me for 20 minutes. You go, what? Nobody had ever seen, no one saw that. Or someone had said, did you go down the stairs into that little room where there were 2 people having a terrible, no, we never saw that bit. So there was the most amazing, for me, that was fantastic to not to have the same experience of it, really. And that's what I want to say. But can I please read you what I wrote when thinking back to my very first experience of that film, because I know that in those days, particularly, and for many films now, particularly films, the director really is very manipulative. And although I love most film, I will look at anything, open a fridge door, I'll look at it, really. But basically, films do manipulate you, and they expect you. They want you to feel, you could feel the music. We've all been there. So let me please read this out, if you don't mind. Here we go. This is my experience thinking back. Julia might have heard this, because I read it once. I've only read it once out loud. She might have heard it once at Women of Words. I did read it once at Women of Words. It's called Adored. Can you hear me, everybody? Yeah?
Yeah.
A stuffy, drafty, cheap church hall, a dusty brown, paraffin sweet, low-ceiling, jerry-built place, the adult said. We eager innocents wriggle and writhe, sat on mucky pond brown, canvas-slung, scrapey stacking chairs, our heads craning upwards, staring awkwardly at the tatty curled cornered screen in the end-on gloom. A sliver of cinemoon dust from on high sprays the beautiful lies. Beams of beatification from an ethereal window, that chink and the shutter whir, clatter, clatter, flutter, flicker. Whir and clatter in this black and white, nun-grey, gloomy, juddering world. Big bows, sharp fringes, cold knees, bruised elbows, butterfly cakes waiting for after. Our small, squirmy, sticky bodies wrapped and shrugged in itchy woolen tops, stubby fingers, licky-mouthed innocent sinners. The film careers onward. I am outwardly rigid and inwardly lost. Quite lost. Large, luminous eyes, whispered prayers, so humble, tortured, poor, pain-bearing faces. Pain-bearing, poor, suffering, weary suffering. violins and voices keeling and keening, swooping and soaring. Bernadette the beautiful and Mary the marvellous weep and weep, and beautiful Bernadette dies away and away. She dies so, so beautifully. My rosy throat chokes and closes. I too weep and weep away, away. I feel myself beautifully weep. I understand how beautiful this. She is a saint, a saint. How wonderful, how wonderful. I sweat and shiver joy. I believe, I believe, I believe. I am a believer. How wonderful, how wonderful, how wonderful. I am Bernadette, I am Mary too. I am a saint too. And one day I too will look beautiful on that silver screen. No longer a sinner, a saint. I too will be adored. There you go.
Oh, Caroline, that's so funny, because I tried to do something for Anna Bean's thing about how the film had impacted on my life. And I started off with Walt Disney, and having seen Snow White, it wasn't a religious, I was absolutely terrified out of my life when I saw Snow White. And it's only when I started doing these drawings I realized how much my perception of women has been formulated by film, from you know, the screaming women in the horror films to the you know, to the gilders, you know, the glamorous, you're the bad women, the good women, and you know, and never the twain shall meet, you know, you're an evil, none too good woman. And the glory of how they're portrayed, it's just that in terms of how they're portrayed, you don't care whether they're good or bad. You're just swept along in this emotional, you know.
But my point about the fact that that director, that was propaganda, if you like, for Catholic.
Manipulated, yeah.
Quite people here have been Catholics. So, one reason why I chose it, because I know that Michelle mentioned she was at a convent, and my mother was a board. So I've had catechism through my veins, you know. So I weren't surprised to know that I gave up catechism at 14, but you know, or any religion, in fact. But to me, it was so fascinating how that film worked, and I knew that I didn't really take away anything about miracles. I just fell in love with the whole idea of being up on that tree. I wanted to be that. I knew.
Die beautifully.
I don't remember that bit. We were taken by the nuns when it came out, but we were at a cinema, so it was a slightly different experience because everything blacks out, and you're just on the screen, and yet. When I went to visit a friend in France, she said, you've got to go to Lourdes. So we actually did go to Lourdes, and I was amazed because in this country, if there's anything special, they put railings up around it. And this is just a little grotto on a sort of bit near the river with candles, and you can go right up and touch any of it. You know, it's, but I remember, I mean, we had a retreat, and the retreat was on St. Teresa, and I know that we had confirmation afterwards. And I think 3/4 of us took the name of Teresa for confirmation. So, I mean, it does have that, but I don't remember her dying in the film at all. You know,
she had to die. Of course she does.
Well, yes, but I don't remember that bit.
I know.
I think it was the fact that we all wanted visions. We thought that if we tried hard enough, we'd get a vision too.
Oh, I know. It's very odd that, you know, that I would love to find, I as and when I've got the time, I will analyse what that director, who he was or she was, probably a man, and, you know, also the business of how that did get round as propaganda, as it were, because...
But she wasn't even pretty.
What you mean in the real life?
The real life girl was very.
Oh, of course not. They never
unpretty.
Of course, they chose Jennifer Jones, who was the most,
Roger.
If I remember the film, doesn't she have a vision at the town dump or something? Isn't it?
Yeah, it's just basically an old bit of
it's a refuse.
Rocks, basically. Oh, rocks, yeah.
Yeah.
And from that, there's a spring comes up, and she puts her face. I was looking at some of it last night again. I couldn't believe how bizarre it was. And she's sort of putting her hands in the earth, and she's putting all this stuff all over it. And then, of course, she's gone completely mad, Then, of course, she's treated as this. Of course, she has to die because she's got consumption and the usual stuff. But I just thought something about the business of what people, when you create a piece of work, whatever it is, where you cannot say that is what it's about, absolutely, because people will always take from it. And that's my bigger point, apart from the fun I was talking about Catholicism, etc., and me. But it's much more to me, it's like when you go and see any painting or anything in a gallery, I've heard people talking, I was volunteering at the City Culture at the Ferrens for the Turner Prize. And I did it because I was nosy, really, and really curious, about the public who'd never possibly been into the Ferrens, which, of course, thousands of people went into the Ferrens for the very first time in their lives, because it was the Turner Prize. And I had the most amazing conversations with people in that Turner Prize. It was absolutely fascinating, daily. People who'd never gone into a gallery, didn't really know what the Turner Prize was, but thought they must go. But there's an incredible gamut of people, people from all over the world, in fact, came. And it consolidated my view that you can't say what a piece of work is about, because it has to have someone to see it, to fill it out. Do you know what I mean?
I can tell you, Caroline, I've stood behind people looking at my a piece of work of mine, either in CAG Gallery or even in the Ferrens, and I've been absolutely fascinated what my work is about, because I had no idea.
Especially, there was one particular, Lubia Hamid, I can never say her name, I'm sorry, I've said it wrong.
Ljubljana.
Yeah. People were very, very curious most people were more curious about her than anyone else there, actually, in that particular Turner Prize. And, you would listen, and they would sometimes catch your eye, and then you realise they did want to talk about it with you. It was really, I loved it, because I really enjoyed being part of their conversation. It was really fascinating, actually.
Caroline, have you read, I'm sorry to be such a Duchamp bore. Have you read Duchamp's The Creative Act?
I haven't, no.
It's ever so short, and it's easy to access.
Okay.
It's all the things that you're saying.
Yeah, great.
When an artwork's, the artist no longer owns it, and it goes out and it continues its journey, and it's got a life of its own. And I think, like today, you read for us a creative piece based on a previous work, and that, I suppose, I looked at a piece where Leslie Kerman had done her own creative response to something that had happened centuries ago. And it means that artworks live on. They live on in whoever's looking at it and interpreting it, or using it as a starting point for their own creative practice, whatever that is. So
yeah, I suppose I was trying to make sense of, I was doing quite a lot of writing about my Catholic past and how I'd managed to
burden
my view. And
look, Caroline, at least you have the glamour of Catholicism. You want to try Church of England. Talk about boring.
Well, I do think there's a lot of theatre in church, of course. I mean, I know that it's
not in the Church of England.
But everything, altar, the priests, I know where it all came from. My love of all stuff. So,
but Caroline, it's also, if you like, I found that when you go through, one of the things you don't expect about Catholicism is how much you know about the history of art.
That's true. Yes, Michelle, that's true. I know a lot about it from all those,
like Sister, what's her name?
Yeah.
No, Sister Wendy. Because I thought of her because I've got buck teeth too. but you know, I'd gone to
the passion of Sister Wendy.
Yeah, I'd gone to Open University just on to start writing again, and I was amazed how much I knew all the way through about music, about art, because it was the history right up to Renaissance.
Yeah.
That's how they hook you in, Mistress.
Well, you know, you just
good stuff.
Catholic Church you went
They slip underneath the bad stuff.
Well, the music as well. And then I found out later that Elizabeth I might have brought in Anglican, but she actually liked the music. So she kept a chapel in one of her palaces where they just sang that kind of music.
Yeah.
And nobody else was allowed.
Music, and that must come from singing in the choir in my convent, you know.
Yes.
I do have a great love for it still.
I do.
So I don't know what obviously Harper Latin is. I just love the theatre of it, I suppose. It's so theatrical, isn't it, really?
Yes.
So
when I was about 6 or 7 years old, my mother healthily neglected me because she was always doing the garden. I decided to build a church in an outhouse thing at the bottom of the garden. And she nearly went absolutely ape when she found this. And I thought, this is great. I've made an altar. I can't remember what exactly I did, but I know I built a church, and I could not understand why my mother, it was like sacrilegious what I'd done. And I've carried on since then.
Caroline, I'm got to show you something.
Right.
I obviously grew up as well really Catholic.
Okay.
I remember that film. It's been actually hearing you talk about and write, well, read it out, that piece that you've written. It was really strange for me because it's exactly, I so relate to those emotions that you felt, and it's really interesting to see how what you took away from it, that you wanted to be on the stage as well. I think that's genius. I love that. I'm not sure whether I've ever done that. I think I still always wanted to be a saint and see miracles and have apparitions. And it's incredible what you said. It is pure propaganda. It's totally kind of brainwashing young people into wanting to be this kind of saint and obviously be, you know, following the Catholic.
Or we have to be pure to be poor, or poor to be
pure. Yeah.
There was
I mean, all of it, honestly. My grandma. But here, look, she did also go to Lord, and I carry this. I actually take this with me everywhere because it's little. It reminds me of home. It's not a representation that I believe, but it's weird, isn't it? Yeah, we even have some water from Lourdes at home. Obviously, didn't cure anybody in our house, so it's nice.
There was a program, you know, last year, and it was, I can't remember whether it's France or Italy, and it was to do with the fact that a lot of people, like in one or the other country, I can't remember, were quite sure that they had seen a statue of Mary move. And they had thousands of people there and all the cameras. And, you know, there was a big debate because some of them still said so other people couldn't see it and other people could. And it's just interesting. It's still going on.
Yeah.
I think one thing it showed me, kind of growing up in that environment and seeing how besotted and convinced people become of an idea, it just shows how easy it is to manipulate people into believing in something and how hard it is to get that out of them once it's planted in there. So I kind of, and people still to this day aren't really aware of it enough, isn't it? Because it's under this disguise of the good, the beneficial, you know, the saintliness. It's very interesting. So
I mean, it begs the question, really, you know, the potential for what immersive theatre can do as well. If that can do that when I was 7 and I managed to somehow myself, you know, 20 years later, or 10 years later in my case, you know, what, it's quite scary, isn't it? What we're capable of and what we're doing, of course, in society. It's just about you know, the lines between art and real life, the scary Mary sometimes.
And I recommend you watch Unorthodox.
Yeah, I've seen that. Yeah, that's fascinating.
I was going to say you should see that film Lourdes, the modern film about.
I never saw it.
It's quite a disturbing film.
Oh, it will be.
Probably a good antidote to any lingering thoughts about Lourdes, as it was in your song of Bernadette.
No, I mean,
one of the things I was going to say as well is one of the things I find very objectionable, in a sense, whenever I see it, is the Sacré-Cœur in Paris, because that was built as a kind of monument to reconciliation, but it was all about the massacres after the Commune de Paris and all those people who were killed, and it just kind of sums up the hypocrisy of the church.
Yeah.
That's all I wanted to say.
I find. Sorry, go on.
No.
I was going to say, just tell you a funny. I was thinking about 17, quite a serious girlfriend at that time, called Linda, and she was from a very devout family, the Pentecostals. And there was a guy coming over to Hull City Hall. I think he was called Nicky Cruz, and he was like a gangster turned, became very pious through his practice of finding, being found and being saved. And it was the first thing I'd ever been to Lights. I'd never been to church. And I was sat with all their family, and they were all kind of, really devout, really serious Pentecostals. And at one time, towards the end, the guy at the front.
Oh, you're frozen. Yeah, the religion's got you, Graham.
I'm trying to block you.
He's had a vision.
You're being censored. You're being
frozen. Very nice. You were just getting into something interesting too.
He's putting a spell on us all.
It's him up there.
But as we were saying, the presidency.
Actually, can I say at this moment, I'm thinking religion and art might be a good topic sometime. Although we seem to have got into it anyway.
No.
Are you ready, Graham? Can you hear? Are you managing? No, he's not moving. No?
I haven't even
gone completely now.
Yeah.
No, Graham's there, but
he's just stuck.
It's very unusual.
Can we hear you though, Graham? Can you talk?
Yeah. Well, even his talk was going stuttery.
Don't do that. We'll think you have made sure.
Oh, I definitely have.
Anyway, I didn't go up, but I went to the toilet. When I went to the toilet, all the people that worked for Nicky Cruz were all shaking the curtains behind. That's how. So magic. I saw that completely debunked in front of my eyes.
That's fantastic. That's great.
Yeah.
I mean,
it was all totally lost.
Scary though, because I mean, it is really serious for me when I think about it a lot. Because my parents went thinking slightly skeptically, but they were in that area. They said at the time, and but my mother came back and said she was really disturbed by it. She found it really, really nasty place. All these people, we're talking about the late 70s probably when they went. So I was probably in my 20s. And she came back and telling me of this really disturbing experience of seeing people being wheeled, and all really, really desperately assuming that they would be saved and helped and made well. And she said it was, and she said that the merchandising wasn't called that then, was just beyond it. I mean, I know if I went, I would buy one too. Probably all sparkly, But it is extraordinary, isn't it? It's a very tacky thing altogether. It's dubious.
Oh God, it is. But it just makes me realize actually how probably, I don't want to say it, I love my grandma to bits, but in a way they were gullible. They really full sail fell for the whole kind of belief system. Even my mom still, I mean, I had to go to church till I was 18 because God, what would have happened? I would have ended up in hell. They really seriously believe that. It's quite, it's quite scary to think how totally influenced they were by
dogma. This is what I rejected, dogma. And I knew that film, I didn't know it, of course, at 6, but, looking back at everything, all the various things I've written about and stuff, it is dogma that you reject. I just cannot take anything.
I think Chapel, Roger did a whole thing about Chapel, didn't he?
maybe
I don't know whether you were with us then, Caroline, but Roger did a whole thing about chapel, and I feel it's damaged him. It damaged me in as much as I just from the very beginning I kicked off and I got in trouble all the time. So I clearly at one point I think believed I must just be evil. I must have been born evil because I just could not believe any of these things. Although briefly I flirted with the whole, building a church thing. But yeah.
I think dogma is about right or wrong, and I think artists or creative minds don't do right or wrong. They do perhaps, maybe, let's try, let's experiment, let's explore, and let's see where that goes. And if you take on a dogma of any sort, you've got to believe it absolutely, haven't you?
Yeah, but I think there is also, Caroline, a thing underlying where can't you just go along with it? Can't you just accept it? Can't you just play the game? And I can feel myself getting angry now because no, I can't play the game. I won't play the game. I will challenge things that I believe are wrong.
Well, you could still challenge. I mean, we had a Jesuit come to the school to see whether we'd learned our catechism properly. And I remember him asking me about the soul. And I said, well, everything's got a soul. Even a jam jar's got a soul. I don't think it went down very well. And I meant the essence of something.
Yes, of course, I know what you mean. We had lay nuns by the time I left my convent. They stopped wearing the and we spent our whole time in first year 6 pleading with them to leave the convent. Don't be a nun, don't be a nun. How they managed to deal with us, I do not know now, because we were 60s kids by then, and and women, especially young women then, were just saying, why are you doing this? It was fascinating. And I think about it now. There was a lot of such a rich tapestry of God. You can go on forever about it. Anyway, I hope I made my point. Is there something else? I don't want to hog anymore.
That's great. And I'm sorry. We did talk a lot about these subjects, but it is so interesting, isn't it? So much is revealed in this seeing is believing. It's unbelievable. But then maybe we should have expected that, isn't it? If we kind of draw the curtain. I also just want to say, because Punch Drunk is a great organization, they say they have a stage without an edge, which I just thought of Julia, who doesn't have an edge. So great. I would like to put it to the group now. We've got 15 minutes left. I don't know. I think at the moment, contrary to our initial attempts at squeezing everybody in 20 minutes, we've gone the opposite way again and kind of giving everybody a bit more of a platform.
Sorry.
I feel it's nice because, otherwise it feels not everybody can contribute or say something, and it kind of develops the subject quite nicely. So quick question, does somebody want to go and we go over a little bit, let it flow, and then the rest will carry over to next week? Is that okay with everybody?
Yes.
Just go to next week now, I think.
Yeah? Or go straight to next week. Sorry, Roger, what did you say?
Just leave it go to next week now, I think.
Yeah, I agree. Go to next week.
Yeah, shall we just kind of call it?
Yeah.
I haven't really done one. I haven't planned one. But I didn't know if I don't know if it'd be easy to do this, but I've just found some feedback from an event that we did called What is Light. So I thought that was quite we put a typewriter out and we asked people the question, what is light? And because we've just been talking about, lots of, religious iconography and things like that, I've just searched my hard drive to find the feedback. So it would take me 10 minutes to read through to show you the typewriter feedback from What is Light. Or I could save it till next week.
Maybe save it till next week.
Okay.
It sounds really interesting. It'd be nice for you to have some time to think through it. But what I could just quickly, and I've prepared that, it was part of, I started pulling a presentation together and I've been thinking a lot about it, but I'm adding new things all the time. It's developing. But I think I want to show you one thing that I wanted to draw on or show, something that I came across when I looked at data which isn't visible in a way, but it's there and we know it exists, and some artists use data to create art and make that visible. And it kind of fitted with the theme of our discussion at the beginning when we kind of thought of the people that unfortunately have died. And one artist, he's called Aaron Coblin, and he's done a project about Johnny Cash. Have you heard about that?
No.
Yeah, it's one of his songs. It's called Ain't No Grave. So he's put this, it's a collective participatory artwork that kind of, he puts it out on the internet, and all these artists across the world have hand-drawn just one frame for this music video. So it's a beautiful kind of commemoration and appreciation of Johnny Cash, and all these artists can kind of contribute by just drawing one frame, and they've put it to the music of this song by Johnny Cash. And it's just a little bit, it's especially inspired by Johnny Cash's central lyric, "Ain't no grave can hold my body down." So just represents Cash's continued existence. So I was just wondering whether we just want to see a brief clip of the video.
Yes, that would be lovely.
To round it all up, maybe. Shall we do? Yes, do that, and then we'll move over to next week and continue this fascinating conversation. So let me get this right here. Okay, share screen. I'll go to here. Share. Then I'll just play this. Make this bigger.
I was first shown the Johnny Cash project through my mom. She knew I loved Johnny. She knew I loved drawing. So when I checked out the website, I was completely blown away. I got to see people's artwork flashing before my eyes, different images, but always following this cohesive video storyline.
The whole video was full of hauntingly beautiful imagery and symbolism that worked absolutely perfectly with Johnny's song. Frames are somewhat randomly distributed, and you had a limited choice of tools and textures. So really your main focus was just in what you wanted to say.
It was like this organic thing that was always changing, because people would be submitting, and you could see hundreds of variations of the same video. What better way to pay tribute to the man than to make something for one of his songs?
I felt really sad when he died, and I just thought it was wonderful. It'd be really nice to contribute something to his memory.
It really allows this last recording of his to be a living, breathing memorial. I am honored to have inadvertently made a contribution to something so magical.
For all of the frames to be drawn by a fan, each individual frame, it's got a very powerful feeling to it.
It's just amazing to see so many Johnny Cash fans collaborate on some of his final work. The artists that contributed, I mean, I've seen everybody from Japan, Venezuela to the States, to Knoxville, Tennessee.
As much as it's different from frame to frame, it really is personal.
Watching back the video from my stream, I could see me not understanding at the beginning of it, and I just worked through problems until my little wee battles that I was fighting within the picture all began to resolve themselves. You can actually see the point where I know what I'm doing, and a light and a dark comes into it. And in a weird way, that's what I actually like about Johnny Cash's music as well. It's the sum total of his life, all the things that happened, the bad things, the good things, and you're hearing a person's life.
His relationship with the master has helped me in my own personal spiritual struggle and journey through life.
I didn't know that I could connect to someone from such a different background as mine, and for it to mean quite as much as it does.
What's the matter?
There ain't no grave can hold my body down.
Come on, Ben.
There ain't no grave can hold my body down.
No, sorry.
Oh, it's interesting though.
My computer's turned now too.
Got it.
I can share the link in the video, and you can watch the song. I mean, this is that's really weird.
Well, I'm sorry they didn't have the Tom Jones version.
Tom Jones version. Did you do one?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Excellent.
Very
So,
nice.
well, thank you all very much again for very interesting, very inspiring, thought-provoking session. And it's great. Look forward to seeing you all next week again, and hear finally, or maybe not finally, from the rest of you. We just go along. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Happy Easter all, whatever that means.
Yeah.
Nothing really.
Chocolate. That's what it means. Chocolate.
Well, remember, it goes back much further than Christianity.
Exactly. Spring, hope, and all that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Eostre, isn't she a goddess? Isn't she?
Bye.
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 Okay. Bye.
Have a good week.
And to you all.
And you. See you soon, Cara.